Welcome. Oops, this is always a weird part. Okay. I'm not sure whether I'm live yet. Okay, perhaps I'm live now. Sorry if this has just my misfire was caught, but welcome to Date Night with Martina. Tonight is episode 15, and we're covering the topic of bringing more to sex again. I'll also, this week, will be much more specifically around how to have a different quality of communication with your partner and what might get in the way of having the communication that you need to have with your partner. For those of you who don't know me, as I said, my name's Martina Hughes. I started Tantric Blossoming around 15 years ago now, offering workshops, retreats and training to support women and men to be more connected to their body, more open in their heart, and to be able to enjoy deeper sexual and relationship experiences. Of course, in this current environment of isolation, I've been doing a whole lot more online, which is what brings me here to offering this date night with Martina on Wednesday nights. I also have an event called Date Night for Single that will be coming up this Saturday from 5 p.m. to 7:30, which is a really beautiful space for singles to learn a little more about the opposite sex, how to connect with the opposite sex, how to have a different quality of experience when dating, and also an opportunity to meet some new people and have fun along the way. I am considering some other new online events, given that we might be in this current state for a while longer. At the moment, I've got a lot of new ideas bubbling up, but I'm not 100% sure which ones are actually going to fully take root and grow into something new. So if you have something that you would like to see me offer as an event, if there's a need or a gap that you feel in the conversations around sex, intimacy and relationships, then feel free to send me a private message and let me know what you would like to see in the space. And as always, I love the experience of community around this work. So if you're at home watching, please do drop me a message in the chat box, say hello and let me know how you're feeling. Hello, Gail. The first comment in tonight is from Gail. It's lovely to have you here again, Gail. How am I feeling tonight? That's a good question. A little bit rushed, actually. I kind of had a shower and some dinner and got ready quite quickly, so I can feel my digestive system is still working a little bit at the moment. But otherwise, I'm feeling excited and happy to be here with all of you. I think there is so much that is possible in the online space, and yeah, I've certainly felt myself growing in the way I present through the online opportunities. Hello, Shalon. Lovely to have you join. Okay, so a quick recap on last week. Last week we looked at the role of self-pleasure and how self-pleasure benefits our partner sexual experiences. So I kind of want to be cheeky and see if anybody wants to say whether or not you experimented with self-pleasure in the last week. Did you learn anything about your body, yourself, what you respond to? Because the self-pleasure really is such a critical component of not only knowing ourselves more deeply, but filling up our own cup so that then when we connect with a partner, we're not coming from a place of empty. Because when we approach a partner from a place of being empty, it's almost like we're looking for a partner to fill us up. If we're looking to a partner to provide the pleasure, to give us something, or for the exchange to be a certain way. But when our cup is already full and we're able to just close our eyes and start to feel and breathe into our own pleasure, it's from that place of connecting to our own pleasure, being able to do that via breath, via self-touch, via movement, then we're much more full, we're much more alive, women are much more radiant, men are much more present. And so then when we come into the partner connection, it's like, there's a whole lot more energy there. We also spoke last week about the importance of slowing down and tuning in to the energy of reading and feeling each other's bodies rather than an expectation that it should look like porn or it should look really, hot and heavy and intense. That over the duration of a relationship, but also over somebody's lifetime, sex changes in flavor. And so learning that we can slow down and actually start to feel more. It's only when we're quite young and hormone levels are very high, particularly testosterone in men, but also estrogen and progesterone in women, particularly progesterone for women around their sex drive. So when those hormones are high, that's what makes us have that really hot, heavy, horny, intense feeling. But over the duration of a long-term relationship, but also in somebody's life, that feeling will fade and become less and less. And that's actually a beautiful thing, but it's also where people need to be a little creative in learning to relax, to feel, to tune in to the sensations, such that sensations start to move freely through a relaxed body without that sense of pressure or outcome or trying to get somewhere. And then with that kind of experience, there's much more pleasure available for both people in a partnered sexual experience. There are also tools like eye gazing, using lube, no penetration before a woman's body is a full yes. There's a lot of little tools and things that you can bring to the partnered sexual experience, but certainly learning to fill up our own cups so that we're bringing more forward rather than coming in from that empty place. To me, that's the key to the partnered sexual experience. I think in our world today, there's a lot of thinking about what I can get from somebody else, or what the other person's going to give to me, or what the other person can do for me, or what I can do for them, which also has that transactional energy around it. Whereas going into an experience of sexual intimacy with a full cup and being able to go, I'm just going to show up and meet my partner exactly where he or she is today. I'm going to let my body respond and see the way the connection and the energy moves between us. That's an incredibly beautiful gift for both people involved, because the energy can then have a lot more of its own dynamic, flowing, changing nature, because energy itself is feminine and energy is always changing and growing and evolving. So when we learn to really listen to that, then there's a whole lot more that's possible. Hello, Danny. Lovely to have you here again. Gail says she's just leaving work. It's been a long day, but feeling really well. Awesome. Carlo says hi, and Christina says hi. Awesome. So let's go into a little meditation. And in tonight's meditation, I want to get you doing just a little bit of movement through your body for the purpose of pleasure and tuning into yourself, because it's from that place of pleasure and tuning into yourself that you start to create a different experience. So just closing your eyes, place your hands in your lap or on your thighs, and take some deep breaths in through the nose and out through the mouth. And with each breath, bringing your awareness to falling into your body. Just imagine, instead of being outward directed, that with each breath, you're falling deeper and deeper into your body. And with your breath, starting to rock from your pelvis, so that as you inhale, you're going to rock forward a little, and as you exhale, going back. And as you rock forward, place your center of awareness right down your body, placing the center of awareness in the center of your pelvis. So you're aware of your hips, your genitals, your buttocks, your lower back, with that center of awareness right down in your pelvis. And as you're rocking the body, tuning in to notice, how does your pelvis feel? How do the hips and the buttocks feel? How do your genitals feel? Letting the movement be the full length of your torso. Sometimes people just move with the upper part of the torso and leave behind the hips and the pelvis, but rocking right from the pelvis, so your movement's coming from the hips. And then starting to move around in a circle. Again, moving from the hips, feeling the connection right down to your buttocks, your sit bones, and your genitals. You might let your body go round in quite a wide circle, opening up through the buttocks, the sit bones, and the genitals, and then going back in the other direction. And then making your circles a little smaller, but still with some movement from the hips and up through the torso. And then start to explore with your arms. Your arms might flow in front of you, to the sides as mine are. If you need to open your eyes and have a look, do so. But looking for the pleasure. So if you've opened your eyes, go back to closing them and feeling where the pleasure is in your movement. What feels particularly good in the way that you're moving in this moment? Can you feel a response in your genitals, in your belly, in your back. Can you breathe into pleasure in the way your arms move? If you're having trouble connecting with the body, if you're having trouble connecting with pleasure, come back to the focus on your breath. You can make your movements smaller or make them bigger, whatever feels right for you. You might like to take your hands to your inner thighs and caress your inner thighs, to tune in to that sense of pleasure, of feeling, of aliveness in your body. And just bring your hands to rest in your lap or on your thighs. Releasing the movement, releasing the breath. And if you were to tune in to whether you feel less connected or more connected to your body, what would your response be? Do you feel less sensation or more sensation? Do you feel less aliveness or more aliveness? Just noticing what may have shifted in your body since the beginning of this practice. And then opening your eyes as you're ready, and if you feel to write a comment in the chat box about what you noticed in the practice, please do so. I have a naughty cat in the background. Just excuse me one moment. Stop! Seems like it's mischievous night here tonight. Both the cats are wanting to play and be a little mischievous. There's a few more comments here. Danny says, Karen's here as well. Hello, Karen. Shalane says, now that I've done Blossoming Woman Level 1 with you, what you are saying is landing really well. Thank you. Awesome. I'm glad it's helped, Shalane. Really beautiful to hear. Sherry says, hello. Susan says, more available for myself. Awesome. Danny says, scary. I'm confused. I'm not sure why it's scary, Danny. Maybe you can explain that in the chat box, Danny, why it feels scary. Danny, feel more connected, not in my head anymore. Beautiful, beautiful. Yeah, it's amazing because our bodies are designed for movement, and often when we're still and we're focusing on work type stuff, there's that, like we get stuck in the head. But giving our bodies the opportunity to move and to feel and to express is such a beautiful thing to do. You felt scary when I yelled stop. Okay, I get it. Yes, I understand. And I don't think there's a mute button here on Facebook Live, so I couldn't actually mute myself, which I would normally do on Zoom if I needed to yell. Um, Carlos says he feels a bit weird. Karen says feeling more connected. Nice. Beautiful. Beautiful. Okay. Episode 15. So, because I did a Blossoming Woman level 1 on the weekend, one of the things I was sharing with the women in that space was how my experience is that what underlies the majority of our conflicts, withdrawal, avoidance, disagreements, and upsets in intimate relationship is our unresolved childhood needs. It's quite common that when we speak, we ask our partner for something, we have something that we need to say that feels quite important, it can be then that the young part of us, the part of us who didn't feel supported or loved or held or nourished in the way that he or she needed when we were children, often that childhood part comes up when there's a moment of tension or conflict in a relationship. And when I say tension or conflict, it could be as simple as, I need my partner to give me some more support around the house. Or it could be as, challenging as, I really don't like the way we make love. But what will happen is that any of those things that we feel some kind of urgency or pressure to communicate, it's very common that the childhood part of us comes up and it's like, oh, I'm scared to say that. What if my partner doesn't love me? What if they abandon me? What if they not interested in what I need or what I want? And a lot of people have this underlying belief that I'm unworthy, or nobody has time for me, or my needs don't matter, or other people's needs are more important. Perhaps drop a comment in the chat box if you relate to any of those beliefs, feeling like you're unworthy or other people's needs are more important or your wants don't matter. I know that I've certainly had a whole range of those kind of beliefs that have impacted the way I communicate in relationships, have impacted my clarity and vulnerability and capacity to be able to talk as a mature woman in the ways I need to. In my head, it might sound like it's reasonable and I've got it worked out, but then there's that gap between what sounds reasonable in my head and the words actually coming out of my mouth, such that when they come out of my mouth, they end up coming out with quite a charge, a sense of demand or expectation, or you're doing the wrong thing, or and whenever we have any of that charge, demand, expectation, it then will trigger the other person into feeling somehow attacked, or that they're wrong, or that they're somehow not good enough. And as soon as the other person is triggered, then they're in their childhood wombs as well. And so all of that, I'm not lovable, I'm not good enough, I'm not loved, and so on and so on it goes. I can see a lot of people are saying, yes, yes, Danny, Karen, Sherry, Leonie, Gail, yeah, all of those kind of beliefs get in our way of being able to go, hey, I need more from our sexual experience. I'd like more intimacy. I'd like more slowness. I'd like more depth. And when probably as you're sitting there at home, you might be thinking, oh, it sounds so easy when Martina goes, hey, I'd like more intimacy. I'd like more depth. I'd like to go slower. And of course it sounds easy when you hear me say it, because I'm in this moment, as I'm sharing with you, there's no charge in my body. But I can have those moments too when the charge is high and I'm like, oh, I couldn't ask Rod for something different. I couldn't ask him to touch me different. I couldn't ask him to make love to me differently. So I have those moments as well. And whenever those moments happen and I notice that the charge is high in my body, I come back to what do I really need and how can I have a look at this charge so that I can speak to Rod about it without blaming him. So I might go to Rod and say, I can feel how, I'm wanting to ask you something. I'm wanting to ask you to meet me in a sexual need. And I feel really anxious about it. I feel scared. I feel upset that I'm going to say the wrong thing. I feel scared that I'm going to upset you. And so I'm kind of getting stuck in my own head and none of the words are coming out. So I just need to tell you all that's going on. Because there's something I'd like different in our sexual experience. So in that, you can notice I was owning my feelings. It was about, I feel scared, I feel anxious, I'm uncertain about bringing this up with you. I feel nervous that I might upset you or that I might cause a problem. But it was all about how I feel. There was nothing in it that was blaming. There was nothing in it that was making it about the other person. Generally, when somebody feels upset, it can be quite common when the charge is high in the body to go into a place of, I need you to do this, and you never touch me properly, and you don't take enough time in foreplay. And when you don't take enough time in foreplay, then I never feel open enough. And of course, I'm exaggerating it a bit at the moment, but you can hear in my tone of voice, there's accusation, there's demand, there's expectation. There's no vulnerability. So then it will make it very difficult for the other person to connect with me, and it will also immediately put the other person on the defensive, and they're either going to want to have a fight with me or they're going to want to run away. How many of you have had conversations of that nature where either you or the other person ends up running away because it just feels too confronting and too challenging? Shalon says, after years of inner work, the belief of not being good enough and that I'm not good, I'm aware these beliefs underlay so many of my insecurities. Beautiful. And it's so good to know that they're there. It's not always about getting rid of these things. Of course, the impact of these things becomes less and less the more internal work we do. But even knowing that those things have the potential to jump up and sabotage us can be enough. Like I find just going to Rod and say, I can feel the part of me that feels not good enough, and I'm starting to look for your validation, or I can feel how I want to run away from you. And that causes our relationship to feel clunky. So even owning that one of those stories is alive in me, that overcomes the clunkiness and changes the energy. Leonie says, yes, I think I come across as blaming a lot when I don't want to sound that way. Yeah, Gail says 100%. I think these are really common things. And I think when it comes to sex, because sex is such a huge taboo and we're not given a lot of opportunity to talk about sex in a healthy, mature, adult way. And it's one of the reasons that I want to bring forward real sex education for teenagers, because I do believe that it is absolutely critical to learn how to have healthy conversations about sex from a very young age. If we don't start doing it when we're young, the taboo and the energy of holding back just gets more and more challenging to overcome as time goes on. And when I say healthy and mature conversations about sex, it's being able to talk about self-pleasure without blushing. It's being able to share with somebody what it is in touch that feels really good. Like to be able to say, I love it when I feel a nice, firm, caressing hand over my entire breast. To be able to say it in such a way that it is like, oh yes, this is what feels good for me. You know, I love having my vulva cupped and held in a really beautiful, warm embrace of the hand. Then I relax and my body opens. Being able to communicate these things in a healthy and mature way means that we're not becoming limited or contracted by the inhibitions and the taboo aspects. Karen says that she has spent most of her life suppressing her voice, have struggled to acknowledge what I want and need, let alone ask for it. Yeah, I totally understand that, Karen. I remember probably very early on in my journey with this work, I would have been early 30s, and being with a man who was a new lover and him saying, what would you like to receive? And I was just like, what would I like to receive? How am I meant to know the answer to that? But of course, how could he know the answer to that when I didn't know the answer to that? So yeah, it's quite a journey to figuring out what really feels good, which is why I encourage so much experimentation with self-pleasure of many different kinds. And then there's also space in a relationship to be able to go, I don't know what I like. I don't know what feels good. I'd love to find out. Would you help me with that? And if you invite a man into that conversation, or if you're a man and you invite a woman into that conversation, it's incredibly empowering for both people involved, because then there's a lot of freedom and permission for the exploration. There's a lot of space to be like, oh, okay, we're both going to explore. We're both going to come to this with beginner's mind. And I think this is one of the things that's really important in this kind of work, is to approach it from a place of beginner's mind, because what opens my body and turns me on today might be very different to what opens and turns me on tomorrow. And so coming each time to the connection with my body with beginner's mind, it's a mystery that gets to be unraveled all the time. And if Rod approaches my body from a place of beginner's mind, then he gets to discover new aspects and new feelings, new sensations, and possibly new keys to opening my body. It's like every touch, every moment offers the possibility of a new key for opening the body. I'm not sure if you can hear Hades purring, but he's no longer being naughty. He's up here sitting on my rug. He clearly thinks he's pretty special getting to sit on the special blanket now. The other thing that I think really gets in our way of having clear communication is taking things personally. And this is something that is often talked about, but I think not very well understood. Like, if Rod touches me in a certain way and I don't like it, it doesn't mean that Rod is wrong or bad, and vice versa. And this has actually happened for both of us recently, where Rod did something sexually to me that I didn't like, and then I did something to him that he didn't really like. And so, and both these experiences happened inside of a week of each other. And so there was this sense of like clumsiness and clunkiness between us, and both of us had feelings of like feeling bad. It's like, oh, I didn't do the right thing, or, you know, it didn't feel good, or it wasn't what the other person wanted or needed. And so there was definitely a place where I went into taking it personally because, you know, Rod didn't enjoy it as much as I might have hoped, and vice versa, that he took it a little personally. But then there was a point where we had a conversation and Rod said, you know, this is going to happen. Like, it's happened before and it'll happen again. And just in that moment when he said to me, this is going to happen, something in me went, yeah, of course. Of course. There'll be days when we're clunky and clumsy and we miss each other. And then there'll be other days where we totally hit the right spot and it's beautiful and everything opens and feels magical and expansive. And that is the nature of sex, which is why we need to be able to have clean, clear, open, and loving conversations to leave any sense of demand or expectation or criticism out of the sexual conversation, because it is a really sensitive topic for men and women. And so if we can remember that, yeah, sex has its clunky, clumsy, awkward days. It's like similar to anything else we do in life. There are days where I meditate and I go, that was an awesome meditation. I did the best meditation today. And then there are other days where I was like, I kind of went through the motions today. It wasn't a great meditation. And so when I say not taking it personally, it's just to be able to step back and go, okay, this is an opportunity to learn. This is an opportunity to not collapse around hurt feelings, but even to be curious, like, what does my partner need? How can I touch my partner differently? How can I respond differently? How can I be more open to this conversation? How can I make sure I'm really listening to what my partner needs, that I'm, really open to receive my partner's feedback? So we have the underlying beliefs that get in the way of our having this kind of conversation. We also have the aspect of us where we take things overly personally. And then the other one that I wanted to address is our fear of rejection. It's often really hard to ask for what we want because we're afraid of rejection. And this is where there's some really fun practices and things that you can do to experiment and to play to become more comfortable with asking for what you want or asking for what you need. So if you're in a relationship, you might even you might have an hour and say inside of that hour, you're going to have 10-minute turns of receiving. So that would be 3 turns of receiving each. So it may be that, let's say if Rod and I were doing this, for the first 10 minutes, I might say, I'd love you to lightly and gently caress my back. And then Rod might say next, yeah, I'd love you to massage my back quite firmly. And then for the next 10 minutes, I might say to Rod, oh, I'd really love for you to suck my breasts and, give my breasts lots of attention and love with your mouth and your hands and, be really intensely connected to my breasts. And then Rod, let's say Rod does that for 10 minutes, and then he might say that he would love me to suck his penis for 10 minutes. And then the next 10 minutes, I might ask for 10 minutes of, deep, passionate kissing. So you get to see how you can experiment and play with lots of different ways of just asking for what you want. And when it's like, okay, this is my turn. What do I want for 10 minutes? It's like it becomes a bit of a game. It feels easier to ask when you've set up a structure and a platform in which it's like, okay, for 10 minutes you'll receive, and then for 10 minutes I'll receive. Then for 10 minutes you'll receive. The structure itself makes it easier to ask. And you can ask for all sorts of things. That might be, for a hand massage or a foot rub, or it could be to have your genitals stroked, or it could be to have the whole front of your body stroked. It could be to have a beautiful oil massage. It could be to be tickled with a feather, could be to be tied up. But that kind of thing is also a really good opportunity if you are somebody who doesn't know what touch you like. You could even say to your partner, can you do all different styles of touch with different pressure and different pace so I can even feel what feels right and what feels good for me? And one of the suggestions I often give to couples is to use a scale of 1 to 5 for touch. So let's say if the man was receiving touch from the woman, and let's say she was touching his torso, but let's say not including the penis to begin with. So let's say she's touching his torso, she's doing some light touch, she's doing some firm touch. If he experiences touch that he really, really loves, he's going to say 5. If he experiences touch that he really can't stand, he'll say 1. If he experiences touch that's it's good but not great, it's 3. If it's touch that's, feels really great, then it's a 4. And the benefit with using these numbers is that the numbers help us to not take things so personally. Using the numbers is a way to receive feedback that can be easier to receive. And it's like, oh, okay, they just said 2. Clearly they're not loving this. I'll change the pressure. I'll change the pace. I'll change the part of the body. So using the scale of 1 to 5 gives you a tool that's fun to give feedback and to play with, and without saying, I like that or I don't like that. So you can experiment with both those things I've just suggested, of having 10-minute or perhaps even 15-minute increments of receiving each. And then you can also, inside of that, use the 1 to 5 scale for feedback. So they're 2 tools that could really help you to connect in a different way. Okay. Are there any questions about anything I've shared? I might just give you a moment to put in any questions or any comments before I go on to the next part of this. I can see I've got a message. No, that's not about this, so I will leave that till later. Okay, let's do a very short practice before I move on to the next section of sharing. Just closing your eyes and place one hand on the heart, one hand on the lower belly. Breathing in through your nose and out through your mouth. And as you breathe into your body, having a sense of how your heart feels, how your belly feels, and perhaps with a deep breath, you might even notice a sensation or a movement in your pelvic floor. Generally, a deep breath can expand our lungs, our ribs, cause the diaphragm to shift, which causes a shift in our abdominal muscles and the pelvic floor. So you can start to feel some pressure down into the genitals. So just tuning in to what you notice in your heart, in your belly, in your genitals. And just release the practice. And I just wanted to do that for a couple of minutes to support you to build that internal connection to your body, to feel the connection to your heart, to your belly, to your genitals. If you couldn't feel that today, that's okay. It will build and develop over time. It's understanding that you can feel that breath through your heart, your belly, your genitals. Just having that awareness is the first step. And then knowing that, then you can keep practicing with full deep breaths so that you build this channel and this pathway. When that's active in your own breathing, it then also means you're going to be much more sensitive, receptive, and aware in connection with your partner. You're going to be bringing more energy, more desire, more love to the experience. Okay. Susan has a question here. What advice would you give to a situation in sharing deep intimacy and your partner exposes a past betrayal, and I'm wanting to stay in a loving, understanding space, but noticing a big part of me is numbing out? A big part of me is numbing out. I'm in appreciation for the truth to be revealed, yet feeling overwhelmed by the betrayal from him and my own mirroring of self-betrayal for overlooking what I innately know. Okay, the bit that I'm not sure about, Susan, in your question, when you say the thing that was revealed, it was revealed during sharing deep intimacy. I'm not sure whether you mean emotional intimacy or sexual intimacy. I'd feel personally, and this is me taking it personally, but I would feel very challenged if it was shared during sexual intimacy. It's also really natural that you would numb out, whether it was happening in a moment of sexual intimacy or emotional intimacy. I think it's good that you're aware enough to notice yourself numbing out. That's, it's clearly part of a self-protection and a self-preservation matter that you're numbing out. So the first step would be even to name that up, to say, I can feel myself numbing out and feel the part of me that just wants to disappear, to run away, to hide. This doesn't feel good. I feel hurt, I feel sad, I feel betrayed, I feel angry. Like, own whatever it is that you're feeling in that moment, because the pathway out of numbness is own the numbness, but then own all the other feelings that are there intertwined in the numbness. Generally, underneath numbness is going to be fear, anger, confusion, possibly rage, grief, whatever else is bundled up in that numbness. So by just owning I feel numb, that gives you a little bit of space, and then you might go, oh, I feel sad, oh, I feel angry. So it becomes like a flower petals unfolding. The bigger aspect for you to consider here is whether or not you can restore trust after this kind of revelation, because yes, it's definitely something to appreciate that the truth has been revealed to you. Um, it is also sometimes with betrayal, some people are unable to return from the betrayal back to trust. And for me, and for the kind of work that I'm offering to people, trust is essential. So if you're unable to return to trust in that relationship, it would be perhaps that, in the long term, you may come to a point of deciding that you can't be in that relationship anymore. If you can process the betrayal, if you can process the layers of what was hidden from you, what you hid from yourself, and as you indicate, it's like part of you knew but didn't really want to let yourself in on it. I see you've responded to my question that it was both sexual and emotional. Yeah, so the timing of the revelation feels incredibly awkward and clumsy, at least from where I sit. And I think it would be very difficult to recover from that. I think it's very natural that you would numb out in that moment. I think the important things for you is to have a look, whether it's with a counsellor or a therapist of some type, whether it's with girlfriends, to have a look at that betrayal, both the betrayal of the other and the self-betrayal, and ask yourself whether or not it feels like something you can work with and move forward and regain and restore trust in a relationship. If the other person is wanting to move past the betrayal and restore trust, then you need to be able to look inside of yourself and feel, is that true for you? It's certainly a challenging situation, and yeah, I feel for you in working through that, because when trust has been betrayed, it can be very difficult to come back from that in an intimate relationship. Okay, so in terms of having some of these conversations about our sexual needs, our sexual wants, our sexual desires, this aspect of the part of us that wants more sexually but doesn't know how to ask for more, we have certain fears that get in the way, like women are afraid of sounding demanding or of being too much. Men are often afraid of being expectant of their partners sexually or asking for too much sexually. There's quite often sexual shame that sits underneath it all. And I did speak about sexual shame in one of the episodes on sexual desire, so it could be worth going back to have a look at that if you missed the episode where I spoke about sexual shame. Essentially, there's this idea that who we are and what our sexual needs and desires are is not okay. Essentially, each and every one of us was born from sex, and we are all innately sexual beings. And when sexual shame takes over, it's like there's an innate belief that there's something wrong with us for having sexual desires, feelings, and needs. So in terms of talking with a partner about this, sorry, I was just smiling at Hades. Here he is, Mr. Grumpy Face, because you don't often see his face. He's usually curled up and hiding. Susan says, thank you, I agree, as painful as it may be. Yeah, really sorry to hear that, Susan. It sounds very, very challenging. So in terms of asking your partner for a deeper, more intimate sexual experience, the steps to take are to be honest, to unravel any sense of accusation or blame before speaking with your partner, to be able to claim your role and your responsibility in it, as well as claiming your desire for things to be different. And also asking your partner if they're open to exploring something new with you. So how that might look is, let's say, if we take an example of a long-term relationship where sex happens, but it's a little bit functional and kind of ticking off a box rather than deep feeling intimacy and connection. So in that kind of instance, a woman partner might go to her male partner and say, I'm aware that sex between us has become a little functional, a little routine. We kind of do it out of habit. And I can feel the part of me that would like to feel more. That, I perhaps haven't brought as much to our sexual life recently as I would like to. And I'd really love to see if we could explore something different. So in that sense, there's honesty, saying, yeah, it's become a bit routine, it's become a bit habitual, and claiming responsibility by saying, I can feel where I haven't really been bringing much energy to it. I've just kind of been going through the motions. But I'd like it to be different. I'd like to feel more. I'd like to see if my body can actually open up more again. Because no matter what your age, all women and all men can feel more sensitivity, more receptivity, more pleasure than you may currently think is possible. It's always possible to open into feeling more and more and more. I had a message from somebody after last week's episode where I'd spoken about eyebrow orgasms and earlobe orgasms. Somebody messaged me and said, maybe you could speak on next week's episode about how these kind of orgasms, how they actually feel. And I was like, it's a bit confusing. It feels like an orgasm. And it really, it might sound overly simplistic, but essentially if I think about having had an orgasm here, it's having a concentrated amount of energy come to the corner of my eyebrow. At the time a man was kissing the end of my eyebrow, but it was like there was a concentrated amount of energy, awareness, presence and desire came here with quite a clear intention to create opening in my body. And that's really all it takes to create something different, is to bring intention for an opening or to bring the feeling of desire. Generally, if a man is touching a woman, it's going to be the intention to create or to support an opening in her. So a man brings his presence and brings that in a directional way to support her opening. When a woman touches a man, it's more about bringing the intention and the energy of sex through her body, such that as she touches him, whether it's with lips, hands, vagina, whole body, that as she touches him, that energy and that flow of sex through her body is felt by him. So a woman is bringing the flow of her sexual desire to the man, and the man is bringing his direction and intent to open her up. And so essentially when I was being kissed at the corner of my eyebrow, there was a strong intention to open me up. There was a concentration of energy that caused my body to be like, shoom, 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 shoom. That's the sound of fireworks, in case you weren't quite sure about that. But it was like these little firecrackers going off inside of me and my body lighting up as I felt an orgasm here at the corner of my eyebrow. And so if you can have that kind of conversation with a partner to be honest, to be honest without any sense of blame or criticism, to claim your responsibility, to claim your desire for it to be different, and then to ask your partner if they're willing to explore. Most people are totally yes for wanting to explore something different, particularly if the conversation is opened in a constructive way. There's another communication that I often give to women who are entering into new relationships or looking for a new relationship. And that conversation might go something like this. So a woman might share with a man in a dating context, I'm aware that I'm wanting to explore some things sexually that that may be a little different. I've become aware of how my body can be incredibly sensitive and receptive and open up quite deeply. However, it needs to feel presence and awareness and real connection. So sometimes that looks like going more slowly, or having more foreplay, or having more opening through my heart, my breasts before sexual intercourse. So there are ways to talk about the things you would like to try that will ignite the other person's curiosity. So if you were a single woman on a date and you're like, yeah, I'm really curious about exploring Tantra and exploring things in a different way sexually. I've discovered that my body can open and experience some quite amazing orgasms, but I need slower touch, or I need, lots of pleasure and caress at my heart and my breasts, or I need lots of deep kissing to open my body and have me feel like a yes way before my vagina's ever touched. So there are ways we can bring these things up that make for like fun and flirty and engaging conversations. And things that you might talk about is how, I'd like to experiment. I heard this woman talking on Facebook Live the other night, and she was saying how if two people just take it in turns to receive, they can explore new and different ways of touching. Maybe if you and I progress to that stage, maybe we could try that out. Or she spoke about this scale of 1 to 5 for giving feedback about touch. Maybe we could try that out now, just on our hands and arms, even before we connect sexually. So there are ways to bring these conversations up that make it fun. There also needs to be, on both sides, there needs to be a willingness to try something new and a willingness to overcoming self-consciousness and embracing vulnerability. Oftentimes people are frightened of the vulnerability when it comes to sex, and just, it's like, I know all about sex, you don't need to tell me what to do. I know how to pleasure you, I know how to make you come. But that kind of bravado doesn't build intimacy and connection in sex. It's actually vulnerability, being willing to go, does that feel good? Would you like more? Would you like less? Oh, could you do this for me now, please? So being able to embrace the vulnerability and overcome self-consciousness, because I think self-consciousness often gets us really crippled inside, but you can either be crippled with self-consciousness, or you can open and embrace vulnerability and then feel and experience a whole lot more. My friend Jade, who, I was about to say she's in Sydney, but I think she's recently moved to Byron. She says, hey love, yes to eyebrow orgasms. She has clearly had some eyebrow orgasms. So there you go. It's not just me. It is possible. So in terms of experimenting, we have, being willing to try something new, embracing vulnerability, In the space of embracing vulnerability, also to allow your feelings, to know that some days it will feel good and some days it'll feel clumsy and awkward, and there may be other days where it feels bad. And the important thing is that if it does feel bad, to be able to name that up straight away. Like if something's not feeling good, to be able to just go, oh, that doesn't feel good. I don't feel good now. Can you please stop? People often struggle with that kind of boundary, but if we can't own our voice and speak up, it then becomes impossible to trust ourselves, but then of course becomes impossible to trust the other person when we're holding back our voice on the things that don't feel good. Then the other things to do for taking some new steps together, I spoke last week about eye gazing. Eye gazing is a really beautiful way to come into synchronicity and alignment and connection between your body and your partner's body. Touch, I've spoken a lot about, but yeah, particularly being experimental with touch and remembering there are not just different body parts to touch, there's also different pressure you can bring to touch and different pace. And oftentimes for women, and certainly I fall into this category as well, like not just of being a woman, but being a woman who my body responds really well to the experience of longing. And what I mean by longing is that anticipation, that kind of like sexually open and a little bit of waiting, a little bit of teasing, so that if Rod was to, let's say if he was to touch the inside of my thigh, he could actually touch the inside of my thigh with his hand, his mouth, his tongue for quite a period of time that would actually build and intensify the arousal in my body. So for men, when you're experimenting with women around touch, don't underestimate the importance of longing, because longing can be something that really builds a lot of energy and pleasure in a woman's body. Men often like more overt sexual contact quicker and sooner. So men don't necessarily want their penis to be teased and tickled and touched lightly. Some men like that. A lot of men, not so much. So for men, longing is not such a big deal. Men would much prefer, or a lot of men much prefer the kind of firm holding the penis and then moving up and down the penis. And you can, do that slower, you can do it faster, depending on the level of arousal in the man's body. But some kind of consistent, firm contact is often better for men. Whereas with women, there can be a sense of wanting lighter, teasing, playful touch that helps build the arousal in our bodies. Also for women, we do need some contact at the heart and the breast first in order for our vagina to fully open and be a full yes. So finding out what your partner likes at the heart and the breast to open in this way. And if women do feel like they're numb or not sensitive at the heart and the breast area, there are practices that you can do like breast massage to restore the sensitivity and feeling to the breast. Apart from touch, the other thing which should have gone actually prior to touch was around being connected to your own body, which is what we did with the breathing in the practice we did around 20 minutes ago. So just being able to take those deep breaths that you feel through the heart, through the belly, down into the genitals, being connected to your body in that way brings a whole lot more connection to the experience with your partner. And then using your breath in a conscious way, like how deeply you're breathing. The more deeply you breathe, the more sensation, the more pleasure, the more opening you will feel. And then experiment with penetration. Oftentimes penetration happens in quite a mechanical way of moving the penis in and out of the vagina. But if a man and a woman slow down and they're connected to their bodies, the hard and fast thrusting isn't necessary for the man to stay hard. If the man and the woman are not connected to their body, if they're both a little disconnected, then the man will feel like he's got a thrust to maintain the erection. But when a woman is at home in her body and the man's at home in his body, then he can move much more slowly in and out of the vagina, and sometimes perhaps even just be still inside of the vagina. But then, let's say if a man's on top, he can then also start to explore how, changing his movement, he might put more pressure on the upper surface of the vagina, or changing changing the angle of entry, he might put more pressure on the lower part of the vagina. He might sit just with the head of the penis inside of the vagina so that it stimulates all of the nerve endings and the opening just inside of the vagina. He could do just some short thrusting movements just in that first part, but then he can also alternate with some longer movements. And during the experience of penetration, engaging in deep breathing so that there's more awareness, there's more feeling, there's more sensitivity. Also opening the eyes so that you can look into each other's eyes during penetration can change the depth and the beauty and the richness of the experience. So I hope I've given you some ideas to be able to sit down and communicate about, or perhaps if you're single, to even make some journal notes about, so you can start feeling into how you might have these conversations in future with a partner. So if anybody'd like to share any last thoughts, questions, or how you feel before I say goodnight, I will just check my messages in case. No, nothing there and nothing there. Yeah, it's been really, really beautiful to share this topic with you all. There are so many amazing topics to share about. I'm not sure what next week's will be, but I will be back here next Wednesday at 7 p.m. for another date night with Martina. So thank you for being here with me tonight, and for any singles, please do come and join for Date Night for Singles coming up this Saturday. Good night.